TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark savage.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark savage stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. We're back with another exciting episode of the TruthSeekah podcast. I'm delighted to be here with you guys and share some information, some knowledge, and always interviewing some really cool guests on here, man. People who I think we all have a piece of the puzzle. I think if we can take our pieces and put them together, they seem to form a picture, man. And I've had some beautiful souls on this show over the years, and today is going to be the same thing, man. More beauty, more love, more understanding. We're going to be talking about returning to nature, returning to that sacred space, man, and the importance of it, how to do it, tips and tricks, all that good stuff. Before we go any further, I definitely have to say a huge thank you to all of my patrons, everybody who is supporting me. I just went full time doing podcasting and music and all that good stuff. If you would like to support, you can head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. And there you can give a donation of any amount, and it's a reoccurring thing throughout month to month. And you get all kinds of cool stuff. You get music that's unreleased yet. You get extra podcasts. There's a private group that's for patrons only, where we have a lot of discussion and request guests and all that cool stuff. So you guys are my family, man. You guys are enabling me to do what I love to do with a passion. And I'm going to continue to bring music and education and do what we do. I've been working on some new music this morning, and I'm excited to get to you guys over there. So if you want new music, people message me all the time. When is new music coming out? When's new music coming? There's already new music. It's on Patreon. Head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on the guest. This is Dandelion. I've been watching his videos on Facebook for some time. He goes live and foraging through the woods, through the forest, finding herbs and identifying mushrooms and things like that. It's going to be awesome, guys. So a little bit of his bio. Dandelion is an Earth Herbalist, forager, musician, and teacher dedicated to working with nature to facilitate the reunion of the people with our planetary purpose. He teaches through Return to Nature, providing classes, lectures, and seminars on wild food foraging, mushroom identification, herbal medicine making, as well as primitive and survival skills with a focus on wild foods and forest medicines. Here's the part I like. He also incorporates the philosophies of yoga, alchemy, meditation, and mysticism into his classes, lectures, and seminars, and brings a deep-rooted indigenous medicine perspective of practicing intuition with plants. Sounds very interesting in a systematic and grounded way. You guys can check out his website, returntonature.us. Without further ado, Dandelion, what's up, my brother? Welcome to the show.
How's it going, brother? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, man, just excited to talk to you. Like I said, I've been lurking for a while. I've been watching your videos for a while, man. Enjoy your work. Me and my wife have been watching them, and excited to have you on. Finally talk to you, man.
Thank you.
That's what's up. So, like I told you before we went live, I've come out of the religion of Christianity and stuff. So I study the scriptures. I study the Bible. I like to find the spiritual stuff in the scriptures and how it relates to us for today. And there's a scripture I wanted to share, man. This is Jeremiah 6:16. And it says, "Stand by the roads and look and ask for the ancient paths where the good way is. Walk in it and find rest for your souls." That's a scripture, man. When I read that scripture, it's just almost like the Creator urging you to return to nature, return to the former ways of the religion of the indigenous people, the practices that they had, that they knew about the spirituality that we're begging for at this point. We're thirsty for it. People are so hungry, but they knew about working with nature, with plant medicines, with plant spirits and things like that. So I wanted to get into that stuff with you today, man, and just talk about returning to the ancient path.
Beautiful. Yeah, that really reminds me of kind of a description of what my classes are like, which often people assume that we're going to go really far away on some big hike. Everybody's like, do I need hiking boots? Can my kids come? It's always like, oh, you'll be surprised if we get 60 feet. And so we mostly stand off the side of the parking lot and realize that everywhere the concrete stops, this beautiful abundance, the Garden of Eden is still present. And that's really what it reminds me of, that quote.
That's so awesome, man. Talk a little bit about what you do, just to let everybody know, because you're doing something really cool and you're traveling around, you're doing these seminars, you're doing these classes, and you're taking groups of people out into the woods, or like you said, right off of the edge of the pavement, man. Talk a little bit about what you offer.
So what my passion is, I've trained myself in yogic philosophy, specifically what I would call Vedanta, if anybody's familiar. And that is kind of a non-dual understanding that consciousness is one, pervading all things. So with that, what I try to do is apply those teachings to nature observation instead of make it an abstract Sanskrit kind of philosophy. So trying really my best to ground those teachings into something that's very practical and hard to refute. So like, I always think people are like, oh, well, I don't practice yoga, but everybody practices like walking on their front lawn. So the philosophy, the perennial wisdom, if you like, is always self-evident in all things, including in nature. And I feel like we're at a time where we are so disconnected from the earth as the source that it's almost gone. And my goal and intention is to just one at a time help people to ingest what Stephen Buhner calls the wild redeemer, kind of like the Holy Sacrament. So when consuming that wild plant, I see it as like, now nature has you. It's going through your digestive system, the DNA, the neurons are firing, everything is going into you, and now she has you. She's taken you. And so that's my goal at classes, is just to kind of provide people a little edge into, hey, it's safe. Like, this is your home. This is what your ancestors did. If they weren't doing this, you'd be dead. So somebody knew how to forage in your family lineage, probably less than 2 generations ago. I'm sure your great-grandmother was an herbalist. And trying to just help people feel safe with that kind of exploration, because there's been an industrial or corporate coup against people going directly to the land. And now it's all about exoticism, which is funny because that's what I try to break in the idea of people come to my class and we're like, oh, let's get started. We take 2 steps and we look on the ground and we say, here's food, here's medicine. Instead of engaging this idea that, oh yeah, let's go to the highest mountain really far away to find these really rare things. It's like every time you stop mowing your lawn, nature just provides abundant food and medicine. So at classes, basically, I live in a van. I'm a van dweller. I call it the Forage Mobile. I raised half the cost on GoFundMe. That's gofundme.com/return to nature. And I raised money selling herbal goods. And now I have a van, and I'm full-time in the van, touring around, looking for wild foods and medicines, teaching online and in person, and just living that life.
You guys got to follow him on Facebook, man. He goes live all the time, just walking through the woods, just pointing out what everything is, man. It's really awesome, man. His vast wealth of knowledge that he has about the plant kingdom and what's good. Like I think we were watching yesterday, me and my wife, and you was identifying some mushrooms and stuff, and you were pointing out some of the poisonous mushrooms and some of the edible ones and stuff. And I didn't even know that even though some of the mushrooms may be edible, if they're on a tree that has the bark on the outside, that's poisonous to you. Like, I didn't even know that there was a difference, that was even something to look into.
Well, that's basically, there's a lot of rumors and there's a lot of fears. There's a lot of misconceptions. So can a poisonous tree be able to transmit poisons into the mushroom? This is a big debate in the mycological world, and nobody's really exactly sure. And also, the idea of poison is always something I try to reverse onto the norms that we have as a society. So, ideas are like, if you weigh Tylenol and you weigh some of the most poisonous plants in the world, by weight, the Tylenol is actually more poisonous for you than the poisonous plants. So, spraying Lysol in the house or Febreze or driving down a parkway is all seen as normal behavior. But you look at a plant and suddenly we put caution signs and caution tape around it or try to poison it to death because of that fear, because of that unknowing. And I think that's an archetype of, projecting on to the other. And I think that was a systematically designed idea, which I think is partially in the Banished from Eden archetypal story of this idea of we've been kicked out of heaven, and therefore anything that resembles wildness or sacredness, we tend to destroy as a culture. We target it actively.
We can go very spiritual. That's why I want to go with you. But a lot of what you're talking about is practical, like practical stuff: how to survive, how to eat, nutrients for the body, what you can eat. So it's a very practical thing where you don't even have to get into the spirituality of it, but just returning to nature, pretty much knowing that Mother Earth, Gaia, provides everything that you need, man. And that's so awesome. It's like we like to take that, something that's so practical, but build on top of it and look at the esoteric nature behind it and why, like, we need it. Why is there a disconnect? And talk a little bit about like why we need it. Like, what is the relationship between our bodies and the plant kingdom? Like, were we made for each other? Talk a little bit about that.
That's great. So, really what you call practical to me is actually very mystical. And something just changed. So when you're talking about these practical ideas, what I really see is that if you go into nature and you find a wild plant and you sit there and you try to identify it and you bring out your field guide and you study it, and then you confirm it and you cook it in the woods on a small fire that you make from twigs with a hand drill fire, you're having a mystical experience. That is tapping you way deeper than, buying something from a grocery store and cooking it on a gas stove. So just by living those skills, you have a direct mystical revelation to your past and the historic context that we live in. And then the kind of thread that we all come from. And I think once we tap back into that, it's like our roots, we're a tree, we're a family tree. And when you go back and you revert into that, you see what we've been doing for millions and millions of years. And that is kind of the basis. And so can you repeat the second part of your question?
Well, yeah. Wanting to know, like, pretty much, were we made for each other? Like, were our bodies made, are the plants here for us to eat? Do they want us to eat them? That type of understanding.
So, it depends on, so I'll use the framework of science, right? So what we know about science is that we are evolved out of previous organisms. And if you take that as whatever it is, I don't happen to believe that everything was just born separated. There's nothing antithetical to the idea of God with the idea of biology and with the idea of evolution. I don't see a duality there necessarily. So what I see is that when an algae is eaten by another organism, it grows and it develops and it consumes that DNA and it begins to proliferate and digest that. And over millions and millions of years, you actually get this growth, this unveiling. And what it's unveiled is us. And here we are sitting here with all these neurons in our brains. We have all these abilities to digest things with our own livers, right? So we have enzymes, we have receptor sites for all of these things. You know, they say like even everybody has an opiate receptor. You know, why? Right? Because somewhere in our lineage, that was something that we consumed, whether it was just through poppy seeds or whatever it was as a food source. We had the ability to evolve and receive and open up to that. So the enzymes we have, the digestive ability shows that we were really built from that previous world. And so I always like to remind people, like, what came first, dinosaurs or plants, right? So if dinosaurs were eating plants, obviously the plants were here and they watched the entire dinosaur proliferation and mass extinction, and they're still here. And then they kind of built us and they're like, haha, we're playing, this is fun. And now we've come out of their bodies and we rely on them. They produce oxygen. Without that, we're dead. You know, so we are coming out of this world, which has supported our being. And sadly, we're turning around now and destroying it. However, the core of that is, I don't think that plants, like, I don't believe that man has dominion over all of the creation and therefore is entitled to do whatever it wants and destroy it.
Yeah.
I think that's a poisonous and toxic idea. Yeah. However, I do believe we are co-creators with nature, and that's a huge responsibility. And we are to be the caretakers of Mother Earth. However, we're failing at that duty. And so when we come out of that Gaian system, what our goal is then is to nurture it and provide for it and to sow the seeds and to think about the waterways locally that we need those waters to live and survive and produce local food, that we are here to eat those seeds and poop them out. And it just coincidentally, when you do that, you proliferate them. You know, you're making compost. So I think that the seeds and the humans are in a relationship, and nature has actually relied, after millions of years, nature has actually produced a biological expectation on Homo sapien to help proliferate oxygen, help clean water exist, help the seeds, the plants proliferate so that we can all eat. And now we've kind of dropped the ball on that, and you're seeing the environmental and ecological and political effects of being so disconnected.
That's deep, man. Very well put. I love it. All right. So at the very beginning, you mentioned something that seems practical, going in your backyard, taking off your shoes and just taking a walk through the yard. Right. Mm. So there's all of this stuff out there about grounding, about putting your feet on the ground, in the grass, as it moves across, and just connecting with the earth. And somehow it does something to our bodies, man. Can you talk a little bit about grounding? Is it a myth? Is it just new age mumbo jumbo? Does it sound good? Is there any truth to it?
I think there's always let's say a biological truth, and then there's a mumbo jumbo that gets put on top of it. So does it heal all your chakras and decalcify your pineal gland? Who cares? It feels good. You know what I mean? And yeah. That's where, like, let's not go. So there's something called the principle of parsimony. And this is something I think that has totally been lost in our society, otherwise known as Occam's razor. This is William of Ockham. He was a philosopher. And he basically said, until you can refute the most basic hypothesis, you don't invent a new one. So you don't say, oh, look, I'm doing this. That must mean I've gone blind. Or that must mean that aliens just destroyed my vision. It means that probably, likely, I put my hands over my eyes. And so until you can refute that that is real, then you shouldn't invent new hypotheses. So no, aliens didn't just take my eyeballs out. I just put my hands over my eyes. Now, with that, going back to like what the connection of Earth does, there is definitely evidence that it changes your electromagnetic field, which I happen to think is your aura, right? Again, non-duality. That is your aura. You have I call it your spora. So you have bacteria all around you. You have microorganisms, spores from mushrooms, molds, it's all around us. We have an aura of that, and it's biological. It's not necessarily energetic only. But of course, you plug in a phone to an electrical socket, and that receives a certain energy, and that actually does something in the physical world. So I don't like the idea of duality between energy and matter. I think that that's not actually real. The origins of matter actually comes from the word matar, which earlier is mata, which is mother, right? So matter is mother. So all scientists are just goddess worshipers. They don't realize it. So when you go out and you put your feet on the ground, you feel differently. And that's something I think that I always try to ground people in. How does it feel? How do you feel? Does it change how you feel?
Yeah.
If it changes how you feel, that should be good enough. And so then all the evidence on top of that is helpful. And there's definitely all kinds of, like, forest bathing is definitely a studied phenomena in Japan, for example. And everyone knows that when you get closer to the earth, you feel better. And you suddenly feel less stress if you go for a walk in the woods. That's why people do it, otherwise they wouldn't. So there is some practical evidence, but then there's also the fact that, it does change your electromagnetic field. It is being shown to reduce stress, all those things.
I agree, man. It's beautiful, beautifully put. So simple answer would be yes, man. Enjoy it, bro. All right. So, looking at your hair, for those who are listening on the podcast and who can't see the video, you have some really nice dreads, really long dreads. You have a long beard, and there's a lot of articles, whether they're from the New Age circles or not. There's a lot of articles about the hair being tied to spirituality, being almost a extension of the nervous system, to being able to just being more sensitive to the spirit realm or to intuition or things like that from having long hair. So there's some scriptures in the Bible. We look at Samson, who had long hair. They cut his hair, took away his power, and he says, "I have become just as every other man. I'm the same as every other man." I had dreads. I had pretty long dreads down my back, and I cut them, just a spur of the moment. And I experienced a depression. I fell into depression when I cut my hair, dude. It was weird. Like, it took months to get over. Really weird. I don't know if it's psychological, mental, whatever, but the science of spirituality in the hair, what do you know about that?
So, there is also this one amazing story about Native American trackers who kept their hair long, and they joined the cavalry to help the U.S. cavalry track, and they cut their hair off as part of the military duty, and they said that they lost their tracking skills. So the idea of Samson, right, is a double-edged sword because, right, the New Age philosophy says, well, if you believe it is so, it will be more so, right? So I try to hold the duality in that sense of, like, okay, I have stored energy in my hair. I definitely have memory in my hair.
Yes.
I definitely have genetic memory in my hair. I definitely have a lineage, at the tips of there is like when I was like 19 years old.
Yeah.
So it is a readout of the life that I've lived. However, it also is able, if that is true, then also it's true that it is able to be cleansed. It is able to be released. It is able to be transformed in a way that only gains the power of spirit if first you can do a ritual to retract the energy from the hair into the energy field or into the body or something like that. So that's always where I've tried to come with it. And that's just my working hypothesis. I haven't cut my hair since I was like 19. And that was basically just a process of again, realizing the natural state. And so, I didn't get dreads or I didn't grow a beard. Like, some people are saying, how long have you grown your beard for? It's like, and I always think, I sit around and I'm like, grow beard, where it's just like, that's the natural state. Yeah. And everybody else is creating effort to mow their lawn, and so I'm just trying to allow myself to be the natural expression of what is natural in the body. Like, hairs on my body are there for a reason, I believe, so I don't remove hairs on my body. One of the ways, like, I studied some of Sikh philosophy as well as so many world religions. And in that, like, kind of, they're all about not cutting your hair. And so I jokingly say that that's the Sikh part of myself, the part that doesn't trim my hair. And that really just feels like it is helping to enhance my sensitivity, my auric perception, but I don't want to be bound by the philosophy or the idea that it is the cause of it, and that's like the Samson syndrome.
Yeah.
So I do not call in the loss of anything. If one day I feel called to cut my hair, it's like, does it cause depression to cut your hair? I'm sure it was many factors. I'm sure, you had this inner struggle with should I or should I not? I try to be really open, because one of the things that I want to do is really engage the world. And so I'm like on the sidelines, and I'm like a forest dweller who comes out of the woods and tries to share and engage with the people. And I've always said, I've made a pact with Gaia and God, whatever, that if you want me to cut all my hair off, just tell me. If you want me to cut my hair off and wear a business suit and engage like that way,
yeah.
Tell me, I'll be a secret agent if that's really what you want of me.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to come from that place of like, if my intuition says to cut it, I'm going to do it. And someday maybe I will.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, bro. Earlier on as well, you mentioned about the plants kind of communicating one to another, communicating with us. Essentially, when we eat them, we're taking on their DNA of anything that we eat, right? And that's very practical and very spiritual at the same time. Like, there's a double-edged sword with both of it. Like when they say you are what you eat, and then you are what you ate. It goes a little bit even deeper, right? So,
you are what you ate. It's true.
So as far as like nature speaking, man, and we listen to McKenna, people like that who talk about the psychedelics, and almost to get into a state of where you can hear nature speaking, whether it's sitting under a tree, whether it's consuming psilocybin mushrooms, and it's some type of walkie-talkie device, or it gives permission for higher intelligence to commune with you. But there's totally something there, 1,000,000%. There's a scripture here. I want to share another one, man. This is Psalms 96, 11 and 12. It says, "Let the heavens rejoice, let the earth be glad, let the sea resound, and all that is in it. Let the fields be jubilant, and everything in them." And then it says, "Let all the trees of the forest sing for joy." And there's a bunch of scriptures like this, not even in the Bible, in all types of other texts. And then when we may do psilocybin mushrooms, or we go on that retreat with ayahuasca, we're connected with the plant kingdom. It's this weird portal, man. It sucks you in, and you're communicated with. You're taught these principles that, like we were talking about before we went live, that there may be some things that are subtle, but it takes going on that journey for even the plants to tell you, hey, just trust, just be, don't fear, return to nature, right? That's what they're saying. Be in the moment. Like, that's the message I've always found. Be in the moment. Don't be anxious for anything. Quit projecting yourself outside of yourself, but be present in everything. So talk a little bit about communication, whether it's with the sacred medicines or without.
Beautiful. So there's a lot to kind of unpack in there. And so what I always try to remind people is, the reason I actually started teaching plant walks is because I was at a sweat lodge, and I felt like it became a plant ego competition where people are like, oh, I have my sacred cedar from here, and I have my osha root from there, and I have my goji berries from here. And it was all about everything was super far away and somebody else's culture.
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment, there's mugwort everywhere, and mugwort is a sacred shamanic plant in thousands of traditions. And people are overlooking that because we're looking to other traditions. And it's important to encompass and embrace all of those other traditions, but it's also important to ground ourselves in the being of what is actual and real in our phenomena. If we're going to find shamanism, it's going to be here. It's going to be in this world, the world that we're actually born into. So with that, I think, one of my quotes that I come back to is, all plants speak, but some plants scream. And so the psychedelic medicines are the ones that kind of berate you and make sure that you understand that the plant world or the mushroom world is communicating to the people. Now, on the subtle level, what we have to remember, and really there's a great book called The Lost Language of Plants, and also that's by Stephen Buhner, and then Michael Pollan has a book. What is it called? It's Before the Omnivore's Dilemma. It's his first book. And what it talks about is, what about the perspective from the plants? What are the plants doing? And so in Stephen Buhner's book, it really grounded the idea that language is not words. Language is also chemistry. And so anytime a chemical affects you when you eat it, whether it's McDonald's or whether it's psilocybin mushrooms, that is communication. That is part of communication. And so plants speak to each other through the language of chemistry. And plants taught man chemistry, right? So that's where we got chemistry from. We learned it from the plants. They are the ones who made dirt and soil and vitamin D and calcium into novel chemistry, which we've never seen on the planet before. So everything is speaking. It's up to us to learn that everything is speaking and to subtly attune ourselves to listening. And that means slowing down, being receptive, and practicing meditation, and not being the being who always tells nature what it is. That's or good. What it should be. Instead becoming a receptive child and saying, I'm the baby, you tell me. And coming into that receptive state enables the communication to develop. Now, then there's the idea of, if you want to kind of break through some walls or enter another dimension or see what quantum theory is about in three-dimensional reality, then there are these sacred medicines which can help us break through our fears and our resistances. However, not if not applied with proper context. Yes. And people can become addicted or damaged with working with psychedelic medicines, especially if they don't know what they're doing, largely because the way the drug laws are set up, that mistakes plants and drugs, which are not the same thing. Yeah. My vision is that only a drug is when a man makes one. Mm-hmm. Right? Anything in nature is called a plant. It's biological organisms. You can't call it a drug. It's a plant. Marijuana is a plant.
Yeah.
When you extract THC from it, that's the drug. Opium is a plant. When you extract opiates or make heroin, that's when it's a drug.
Yeah.
So the natural world contains these chemicals of communication, and they're basically banned. We're banned from engaging in them. But oddly and coincidentally enough, what we have is that the society who does not consume them are the ones that determine their legality and the story about them. And they're saying like, oh, you people are always tuning yourselves out and seeing Grateful Dead bears dancing and stuff. I've never had those experiences. I've never had meaningless hallucinations. I've had direct communication with source. And that is very important. And that's been part of my practice from, 18 to 20, when I started listening to Terence McKenna, and he talked about the heroic dose. Yeah. And I started researching, shamanism in the Mazatec culture, and Maria Sabina and R. Gordon Wasson and Richard Evans Schultes, who were anthropologists who went to these tribes and they learned their plant medicine rituals. And so my intent was always to come from that place. And that's a very different intent than being at a party, being like, let's see what this does.
Yeah.
And I don't recommend doing that, although that's not right for me. I always have to come to that. Like, that's not my path. And I would always recommend being with a competent guide, or at least a community which can help hold space if you need it, or process or talk to about those kind of experiences. But they're very powerful, and they're very sacred. And we need to build a sacred institution, which is shamanism, on working with those, and that's what we've been missing. And that's why the drug laws and the repression is horrible, because it gets a kid who wants to explore the alteration of their consciousness to turn to meth instead of turn to ayahuasca or mushrooms. It's completely designed to lower the tiers down to garbage. It's just like, while alcohol is legal, what revelations, do people usually get from being stupid drunk and passing out in their vomit. But cannabis constantly gives revelation, you know. And if you tune yourself and you work with that in a way where you're receptive and in a meditative way, you can receive profound guidance. It's just a matter of when is that sputtering in circles, you know, when is that doing physical damage to ourselves? I don't think that every day, you know, is right for me. Yeah. And then it's a matter of respect and not using. And I don't think we should, these are our ancestors. These are older than us, these beings. And if you want to say there's either a being in there that's like a soul or a spirit, or there is some otherworldly entity that uses those as some sort of telephone line to humans. Yeah. And whatever that energy is, it needs respect, not abuse. And if you try to abuse them for your own enjoyment, usually you'll get in a bad way. And you see that with ayahuasca, for example, there's plenty of sorcery. There's plenty of dark stuff happening. Yeah. So it's obviously you have to set your own ethos and your own quest. And that's really important with working with those medicines.
My encounter with psilocybin, I did a very low dose with some friends at a float tank shop, and we kind of gave ourselves to it. We fasted before. We kind of searched our heart to kind of some things we want to deal with, and we went into, had a beautiful experience. It was very philosophical, very introspective about things that I needed to change, my life's course, vision, where I wanted to go with my life and how to get there. And it just birthed something within me that it was just overwhelming sensation that I needed to succeed and to do it, stop wasting time, those type of things. Very beautiful. The second time we did it, I took a hero dose, and I thought it was going to be the same thing. I thought it was going to be very introspective, and we're just sitting there hanging out. You know, you see closed eye visuals, things like that, complex geometry. When I closed my eyes, I seen that. The second time we went to a retreat, and it was the same thing. We were fasting, you know what I'm saying, several guys. We got a cabin out in the woods, just ready to connect. We were all looking forward to it for weeks and doing our research and all that kind of stuff. So we do it, and I go outside, and I'm starting to feel uneasy. I took a hero dose, and I'm thinking it's just going to come on very lightly and be philosophical and look into myself. So we're doing chants and stuff. We're singing some mantras to the earth and to the sun, just connecting, man. It was beautiful. And walk outside, I'm feeling uneasy. I throw up. I get scared. I panic. What's happening? Because I'm starting to see like the veil between this realm and the next one get really thin. And I'm feeling a dis-ease. I'm like, oh man, what's happening? Like, this feels like some type of ayahuasca stuff that they always kind of downplay psilocybin. Oh no, it's not an ayahuasca trip. You never tried ayahuasca, that type of deal. And I started seeing like this webbing of connectivity of the plants, almost like the mycelium, everything just being connected. Yeah. With like this green light. And it was at nighttime, and it was beautiful, but it scared me. I'm like, this stuff is trying to take me, man. Trying to pull me out of my body. And I'm going through the fears like, okay, if I call the cops, can they make this stop? Like, did I eat poison? Did I eat poison? That's kind of one that everybody goes through. Did we consume the wrong thing? Am I going to die? And I start fighting that stuff, and I walk back in there with my friends. And one of the guys was well seasoned who kind of set everything up. And I look over at him. I'm like kind of panicking, man. But I sit down. I'm trying to calm myself down. I look over at him. He's like, man, quit fighting it. Yeah. I said, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. He said, hey, man, quit fighting it. Yeah. Let it take you. And I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. Because it feels like it's trying to take me somewhere. It's trying to show me something. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to quit fighting it, man. I'm going to quit fighting it. And when I did, like, it was like clockwork. It felt like it pulled me out of my body through these portals to this place that was communicated to me. This is where we go when we die. Mm-hmm. I'm taking you where I've taken your ancestors. We were on an Indian reservation too. I have Indian ancestry, Creek Indian, and it was sacred ground, man. So it was even more special. But it took me to that place, and I would snap back to my body, and we'd look around, and we'd all come to like, what the hell is happening? We didn't expect that, and it was all synced on timing. We'd look around, and it was like going up a roller coaster. Here it comes again. Mm-hmm. And we'd all go through, and we'd sit there for 2 minutes, just not knowing, like we're gazing into eternity. And we talk about the beings, man, I was confronted with an angelic presence, that, you know, we did the golden teachers, which is the strain of the mushroom. And I refer to them as the golden teachers, as these beings. And they had a conversation with me. And, you know, I do music and I talk about traveling the multiverse and gazing into Orion's gate and communicating with aliens, all stuff that I'm into, which can be done, contacting earth spirits and things like that, all beautiful things. But I throw it out there nonchalantly. Like, hey, everybody can do it, you know, it's cool, you know, that type of deal. And they check me. Say, hey, is this, are you the guy they call TruthSeekah? Are you the guy who's throwing all of this deep esoteric stuff in your music? You just throwing it out there for people? That's you? You're talking about traveling to the Pleiades and gazing into eternity? That's you? I'm like, yeah, it's me. Okay. We just wanted to make sure we got the right person. We got some things we want to show you. We just want to make sure that's you, and want you to know that what you're doing, it has consequences. It's special, but we're going to show you some things. We want to let you really gaze into eternity. And like my music became even more real. Back into the abyss, man, and taken to those places of the colors and the euphoria and the tears of beauty, of creation, of just being glad to be alive, man, and just camaraderie, everything that is beautiful, man. We experienced it together, and that was my second experience, and it changed my life, man. It changed my life. And I've got a song I want to send you when we get done. It's called The Golden Teachers, and it talks a little bit about that. And at the very end, it talks about, I have some samples from, I forgot the woman's name, but she's talking about that all plants matter is speaking. And some of them speak more often, some of them speak more frequently. And sometimes you have to do things to get into a state where you can listen. And I think it's beautiful too, because like in the state of spirituality, and it's almost like I've become more sympathetic with others, of trying to put myself in their shoes. Okay, and that's how I show. I whether it's God, the universe, whatever, taught me sympathy for the people in Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan, when I was able to see what it's like when the U.S. bombs them and runs through their villages and taking women and children captive and doing crazy stuff. It's like, okay, what if that happened to me? And so kind of the same thing with the plant aspect. Okay, what if this is me? Like what do you have to teach me from your perspective, and to learn from whoever's perspective? It teaches you not to judge, man. There's just so many life lessons, and it just showed me that it was our coming of age, which we in the West have totally, we don't have it. It doesn't exist. I say the closest thing to a coming of age is college or something, and I don't know, but it was beautiful, man, and it was something ancient that we communicated with that night, and it changed my life forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great sharing. And I've had similar experiences. And I think there's one aspect which you're touching on, which, you've used the word sympathy. I would use the word empathy, which differently means that you get out of your ego's perspective and can actually access, through travel, and access the other being's perspective, whether it's a child in Iraq, whether it's a plant or a tree being cut, right? These are the experiences that people have on psychedelics often, and they are the ones that grow our empathy. And when we can feel and when we can perceive what's going on, that's when we act to change it and to help. And that's really what I think that the plant teachers or the mushrooms want, is they want to turn us into Loraxes, into channelers, into servants of the earth, because it's their earth too. Like, they're ambassadors to the humans, saying, hey, enough is enough, kids. Like, we need oxygen. You're going to die. We're going to die. Nuclear war is not going to help anybody with anything. Here, feel what it feels like to get bombed, for 20 years in Afghanistan. So those are the things that we need, and yet are repressed from our society. And that's exactly why it's important. And, I remember working with Salvia divinorum one of the first or second times. I'm one of the very few people that feel like I understand what's going on with that. And one of the first times that I met these entities, these beings, and I was like, who and what are you? And like, I'm going to tell everybody about you. And they're like, yeah, try that one.
Yeah.
Try to tell everybody about us. That'll make you look like a complete nutball. And I realized in that moment that that's what esoteric means. And that's why I'm a little systematic in how I kind of reveal my own personal experiences, because the seeker must go through the initiation on their own. And even if you try to divulge the secret, they do not understand. And so, you know, esoteric is not things that we repress from people with secrets, like secret societies. Esoteric is also things that someone cannot perceive because they're not ready to be initiated in that. Mm-hmm. And that's really amazing. Like, for example, you're talking about the Bible. Like, I believe all sacred texts have an exoteric and an esoteric interpretation. Yeah. And only on a certain level of your development and your growth do you realize this is not about people. This is a Jungian archetypal story about all that exists. Yeah. And, you know, that's the kind of deeper level. Like, my individual archetypal story of me, Dandelion, is a metaphor for man.
It's beautiful.
You know? And everything has these multiple layers. And I think that's, again, what the psychedelic medicines show us is, you know, you are a microcosmic representation of the entire cosmic process. And within you is the entire cosmic process unfolding. And that's as above, so below, as within, so without. So those multiple levels of being are so important to get to know, but also we need to be careful in how we articulate them as a, whatever we want to call ourselves, as a waking group of people. We need to become masters of the word, because these realms are so subject to misinterpretation that obviously, like, you see it all the time. You know, people who have these psychedelic experiences, like you're saying, maybe I should call the cops. And in you know, it must be a good idea to tell the cops that I'm now enlightened, you know, and like, let me tell them about the angels. And so we need to understand we are secret agents. We are walking between the realms. And when we do that, we have to know how to deliver the right sentences and the right words to awaken those who are ready, and be very careful about kind of revealing something that's subject to misinterpretation, because a lot of people are trained in a society that is basically materialistic rationalism. You know, the church as an institution has failed the people. Mm-hmm. The spiritual core of the Bible is real, you know, of all sacred texts. The institution, the monetary corrupt system that has been built over that has sown so much doubt into our society that now people have become backed into a corner, are afraid of their own human soul, do not understand that realm, and therefore are stuck in a place of like, okay, only what I can see is real. Only what I can see is real. Only what I can see is real. And as a result, they're very afraid, they're damaged, they're broken, and they're scared. And that's kind of the awakening, is to pull people out of like, well, here's another perspective. And this is why I think the plants and the mushrooms are, you know, why ayahuasca is coming into the scene so strongly, because those are powerful forces that there's just, it's very hard to go back to sleep after you have you know, a DMT experience or something.
Yeah, I was, I kind of want to talk to people about, you know, how we say like ayahuasca trips or, you know, the psilocybin doses can heal depression and pull you out of depression and give you purpose and overcome the fear of death. Yeah. But there's another aspect that I've seen, that once you see the other side and you go back to working at the machine shop or being the guy who is in a warehouse working somewhere, boxing stuff, that can, you know, after gazing into eternity, communicating with this plant life that encourages you to seek after your dreams, to go to find out why you're here and pursue it. There is a form of depression that comes if you don't do it, Like if you have that communion and then you go back and just try to live this mundane life and not pursue your goals, there's like a immense depression in that too, you know? I don't think many people talk about that.
You bring a really good point, because I think what we misinterpret the message is as you need to leave your job, leave your school, leave your family, and go sit in the woods and be a crazy lunatic and just eat mushrooms all day. That's probably not the message. And what it comes is like before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And I don't find that it's a quantitative issue. It's a qualitative issue. If I'm a mechanic, have I been truly honest and serving? That's different. I can still be a mechanic, you know, but like if I'm a janitor, am I sweeping with prayer in my heart, or am I doing this for money? And that's quality inside of the soul that needs change. It's not necessarily that you try to change the world to be more comfortable around your particular psychedelic psychosis. It's that we engage the world in a different way with more humbleness and more respect and more care and more awareness. Mm-hmm. And out of that, you know, out of that desire to serve, I believe that the universe, God, will pick you up and transition your job quality to the point where you no longer are the janitor, but it wasn't something that you extreme did in your head with your rational thinking, like, oh my God, I have to get out of this. This is a trap. The material world is a trap. You know what I mean? Money is an illusion. Yes. And play, you know, this is just a play. Like I remember that great Bill Hicks quote, you know, something, you know, today a young man on acid realizes that all matter is just vibration, and we are the imaginations of ourselves. And here's Tom with the weather. And the idea is like the revelation is not antithetical to being a normal human being. And that's what the plants have told me. And so I try, even though I have a beard and dreadlocks and, you know, I dress pretty normal, and I try to just be a normal person. And within, I try to channel that transformation. Mm-hmm. And almost like no one can see it. It's just a vibration. It's just a light shining out of you. And that is, I think, better than wearing white robes and screaming, the end is near down the street, because nobody's going to hear that. Everybody's going to be triggered. Everybody's
done that.
You know, and that's the problem with psychedelic consumption in a way, is that you get this power. It's just coursing through you. And then the question is what to do. And, you know, I've done that too. Like I've been in a position where I've been like preaching and having all the answers. And that's part of our spiritual growth. We all have to understand that. And then something kicks you in the stomach eventually, if not lower. And, you know, eventually we get to the point of like, okay, like the answers are to be exemplified, not to be preached at, you know, and preaching can only go so far. And telling other people how to live is secondary to living that way. And like, for example, I always think about, you know, with a fire, like imagine if you're trying to teach a person how to build a fire. The best thing you would do is just build the fire in front of them and show them by example, right? Because if you try to like turn it into a physics lesson and a mathematics lesson and a, you know, how to place sticks, it sounds like obsessive compulsive disorder. They just need to watch and observe and learn. And so, of course, this is the old spiritual problem, solution, quest is, you know, change myself, and then, oh, I'm addicted to changing others, and look, change myself. Let me come from different angles, because we, you know, our safety, our ego's safety lies in other people becoming more how we want them to be. And although many people would be benefited by that, that's the sad and the angst and the tragic thing that we have to sit within our souls. Like, yes, there are people who would rather poison themselves slowly and die of it and run from the truth. Yes, there are people who don't want to see. Those people are damaging the planet and causing us issues. They may shorten our lifespan. They may destroy our life. Like 5 people might have an all-out nuclear war that kills us all. And so we have to figure out how to be like social justice warriors in a way that channels the highest virtues, the highest spiritual virtues that we understand. Like, you don't become a totalitarian dictator against totalitarian dictators. It doesn't work. how do we raise the vibration and become examples of more compassionate people with persistent knowledge, but how do we deliver that in a way that is inclusive and not exclusionary? And I feel like in my path, because I stand in front of people and talk and just like go somewhere, and then suddenly I snap out of it and it's like, what happened? And then I started doing video editing, and I would see when I would get preachy and shoot someone down, and I would see their aura shrink and their shoulder shrink, and I would be like, oh man, don't do that. Yeah. And that's been a really good self-reflector.
Yeah. Oh man, it's just so much, man. Cause I've been through that stuff too, as far as, preaching and standing on, even funny, standing on the street corners and wearing all white. Like we used to do that, you know, and we'd preach and the end was near, repent, turn from your sins, those type of things, you know, which is righteous, a righteous thing to do. But it's the spirit you're coming out of, as far as like, just simply like, don't tell me how to live, show me how to live, show me how to do it right. And there's so much that can be said through that. And, you know, like you said too, I mean, there's a lot of, I think that's part of our process. A lot of people have to go through that. I'm thankful that I did that stuff. I got videos of it too, and the videos make me cringe, but I'm thankful for it. I've kind of learned not to do that now that I've done it. And then we're able to see people who are in those realms of understanding, and we're able to show empathy to them. Hey man, I've been where you are, and there's more ahead, you know, learn everything while you're here, and try to show them compassion. And what's cool is that a lot of times you can pull them out of that, because you can show them wisdom and understanding about, hey, I did this, but try this and just see what changes. See if you get results when you do this, and it works, man. You know, I guess before we get too far away from the psychedelics, I wanted to ask you, whenever you went down those paths, did you feel like it was something that was calling you, maybe from research and study? Was it something that was calling you, or did you just stumble upon it and do your research? Because I really felt like, for me and a lot of people, it was kind of it was something that meant to be, and it was like, hey, we have something to show you, and eventually you're here now. Now we want to communicate with you. Do you feel like that was spiritually calling you?
That's, again, you know, back to this idea of, you know, it's only for those who get called. You know, any path is only for those who feel the inspiration. And from my experience, I definitely feel like that has been my life passion. I mean, my whole foraging and herbalism practice started from understanding that there were these indigenous cultures who engaged in shamanic plant ceremonies. And that was the way that I tried to explore nature. So that was actually previous to me ever looking for edible mushrooms or anything, you know, listening to Terence McKenna, learning about, you know, as I mentioned, all these anthropologists who went to indigenous cultures. Like, I always wanted to be an anthropologist who went to indigenous cultures and learned from them. You know, I really always felt a calling from that. And, you know, the ways that mushrooms or salvia or anything came into my life always felt like they were accessing me more than I was accessing them. So, you know, I knew about ayahuasca for probably 20 years and never engaged in a ceremony, because I believe that the connection with the teacher is just as important than drinking the brew. And so literally how ayahuasca came into my life was when it was ripe and when it called to me. It was serendipitous. I didn't even have to pay for it. Colombia trip just manifested out of the blue. And I found myself in front of the teacher and the medicine. And literally I did not make an effort, an intellectual effort. And so for me too, like with mushrooms, it's like, I would never be at a party and somebody's like, hey, you want to try these mushrooms? Like, let's do it. Like, that's not my style, because I feel like I need to intention set and quest and create a ritual and make boundaries around it. And I try to do that vision quest for like a couple weeks before I would consume it. And it's like essentially saying, okay, is it really time? Like, are you sure you want me to come to you? Are you sure? And if there's any indicator of no, then I'm going to listen to that. I'm not going to override that with my mind because of addiction or attachment or anything like that. So, you know, I think there's always a calling, you know, that has to be there, or else maybe that's a lot of the people who have bad trips, or
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
like maybe it's not calling to you, but you don't care and you don't listen to those signs. I mean, you know, a lot of life is you have an intuitive feeling. Our whole culture is trained out of listening to that intuitive feeling. And so we don't pick up on that intuitive feeling. We do the thing. And then later we're like, oh, I knew it. I felt it, but I didn't listen. And then the damage is done. So,
man, that's wisdom, man. Because I like to tell people, even though I describe it as being something so beautiful, so life-changing, I don't want to encourage people to do it.
right.
I want to say, and this is what I just tell people, say, if it calls you, it calls you. And that's between you and the plant teacher, whichever one it is, right? So I don't want to be like, yeah, man, go do mushrooms, try to find a place, get by yourself, get with people. You know, I don't really do that, even though I do a little bit, but vocally, I'm like, look, if it calls you, it calls you. And I think I think if it wants you, it's got some things to show you, it will call you. You'll have this drive within you to do it that won't go away. Yeah. And until you do it, you'll be so consumed with it. And I mean, that's what happened for me. So that's all I can share is what I've learned, you know? I wanted to ask you about the salvia, because I've always been interested in the salvia, not because of smoking it. Like, I've watched all the videos of people smoking it and losing
Those
control of it.
Absolutely horrible, by the way.
Okay. So they lose control. They're slobbering. They can't talk. They can't use their hands. They're crying. They're scared. I've heard stories of friends pissing on themselves and thinking they were going to die and fall in holes and stuff. But I have watched the little documentary when they were eating the leaves, and the way it gently went into that place and then experienced those realms and felt connected to nature and gently came out. And that seemed very interesting versus the whole smoking it and being thrusted into this weird place and losing control of all faculties. Talk a little bit about, like, because I know you said that you communicated with those beings, and I've heard people say the same thing. And one of the ones that I heard, they met a woman, a goddess type figure, that said, I wasn't meant to be smoked. Just talk a little bit about that, because I'm definitely interested.
Sure. So I think first off, when we're talking about this calling, you know, that means for me spending like 5 years researching, learning as much as I can. So it's not like, oh, I'm called to it, I bought it on the internet, let me down it. So, you know, just to put that out there for people who are listening, that's a really important thing. You know, your quest, your spiritual journey is yours, and don't discard the pursuit of knowledge. You know, that is philosophia, is the love of knowledge. So, of course, salvia is also called the herb of the shepherdess, and or the eyes of the shepherdess. And so this is really important. There is a feminine energy, a feminine entity behind that. Now, with all things, like within the alchemical tradition, right, there was actually the idea that you build your soul, that you build an astral body, that you're not given one, and you build it through almost energetically sensing your boundaries. Like, as you do your practice, you start to feel the walls or the boundaries of your aura. And as you do that, you start to iron out the poison and the resentments and the past hurts and the damages. And as you do that, the boundaries of your auric body get stronger, so that when you do travel, you know how to navigate. And what I think is happening with salvia is people are getting in the car blindfolded and hitting the gas at 1,000,000 miles an hour and don't realize that there is this willful power that you're supposed to have when you engage these teachers. So, for example, it's like with your hand, you lift your hand up. That is willful. That is like third chakra. That's will. That's a power. That's a shamanic power. And a lot of people think that they just throw that in the garbage and see what happens. And as a result, people like take left and right turns with salvia, and you end up as like a couch. And that's empathy, right? Empathy is like, oh, I was the perspective of a wall, and I saw everybody from the perspective of a wall. It's like, that's cool. You're getting empathy, but you took a wrong turn. because your intent, not your intention, your intent, that willful power is the vehicle that drives, right? That is the way of seeing where you're steering. And so I think that that's the co-creative power that 90% of those videos are horrible. First of all, it's not for in the middle of the day, you know, with your eyes open. It's not about your body moving. So what my experience is like is in the evening time in a very safe place, and it's only going to be smoked. It's only going to be the most 15 to 20 minutes. And the least that you will do is lay down for 15 to 20 minutes and not engage the need for your body. When people engage the need for their body, that's when they freak out and move and roll and do all these stupid things. So you have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to let myself be dead for 20 minutes. If you can't do that, it's not for you. It does seem to be a portal into the after death world. You see the place you go when you die. You can enter that place. Now, I think there is a cosmology, right? There are these sheaths of planes of existence, you know, so in the Hindu mythology, they talk about the 7 lower worlds and the 7 upper worlds. And these are also the inner chakras. And so there's this correlation with like, you can get to this level, or you can go to this level, or you can go to that level. So behind that whole process feels like there is source, angelic source. There are beings, but you can always stay into these personal realms. You know, there are many sheaths. So I have never gotten the opportunity to chew the plain leaf and do that ritual. I have smoked the extract. I don't do that often, probably 15 times in my life. And I would just recommend a great resource is to listen to Kathleen Harrison. That's Harrison. And she has 2 stories of going down to the jungle and chewing salvia with the Mazatec. And they taught her how to do that ritual. Like they said, never laugh. It offends the spirit of salvia. Never laugh. Right? And continue to pray out loud was another thing they told her to do. So these are parts that we can take from the indigenous wisdom culture and apply them instead of starting from scratch and just being like, let's see what happens. I'm driving. Let me hit a bowl of salvia. Like that's where Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, otherwise known as Ram Dass, had this psychedelic philosophy in the 60s about set and setting. So your mindset and also the physical setting is just as important as the. And if we don't set and setting, if we don't align those things, if we don't create the proper physical surroundings and inner quest, then we will just kind of have an experience that's hard to deal with or do something stupid or break our minds or become psychotic. And that can happen. And that's why it's recommended to be with someone who's competent or to try to talk about these things. And that's why I like to engage these conversations, because it's sad that nobody's able to talk about it. So everybody's got to figure it out from scratch. And that's a drug oppressive policy. And that's why nobody knows how to shamanically practice. And so, you know, I don't think that we necessarily become shamans, but I feel like we all have to do our best to engage in a shamanic perspective and mindset, which requires a lot of study and training and working with elders and, you know, not just going head on.
I had some friends who was with us when we had the hero dose thing going on, and they had a beautiful experience, you know, and it wasn't as profound as mine. It changed my life, man. But they had a beautiful experience, and then so the following weeks they're like, "Hey, I got some friends who have some. I'm gonna go over to their house, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna tap in, bro." You know, I'm like, okay, I'm not doing it yet. I have to. Like all the information that came through, I have to deal with this first. I have to get my life in order. There's no reason for me to go back in to get more information or insight about what to do unless I'm thankful for what they've shown me. Let me show them that I'm thankful for what they showed me.
Amen.
So they try to go in with some friends at a party, and he's wanting to recreate what we did. And he didn't know the people he were around. We were fasting and prepping and everything. So they had mushrooms. They go there, and he's excited to show them what he's found, you know. And they go in and they take the doses and whatever, and they open their front door and they put on crazy heavy metal music videos wide open where it's just going through the whole neighborhood. So therefore you're thinking that the cops are really going to come, and nobody is in a state where they can talk to the cops, my buddy starts having a panic attack. And he's like, goes, locks himself in the bathroom and starts praying and asking for them to turn the stuff off. And they got music and strobes on, and they're just like having a party. And they're probably drinking and smoking and everything with it and just not giving themselves over to it. And it freaked him out, you know? And that's part of it, you know what I'm saying? Just to like
permanent damage, you know. It's a real responsibility.
Set and setting is key, man. And I think that's why you know, in the other cultures, they have a shaman. They have a person who's going to lead you. They're going to play some soothing music. They know that you know, there may be a time where it gets overwhelming, and you're going to need to be coached down. Like even now, just because we don't have an ancient Indian man with us at our gatherings, we need somebody who is a little bit more seasoned to kind of know what's going on. Or you have a panic attack, you'll freak out and have a bad trip and be fighting demons for 8 hours. I've had friends who've done that and mixed all these drugs together, and they fought demons for 8 hours, and that scared me, made me not want to do it. But I didn't know that they had mixed all this ketamine and all kind of stuff together, and it scared. I was like, you know, I'm not touching that, dude. No way.
And sadly, every time someone does something like that, it gives the government and the media the example to continue to force us into a childlike state with our responsibility. That is the poster child for why drugs are bad. Okay. Yeah. And so we have a responsibility also to show the society that that's not what it's about.
Exactly.
People are recommending, first of all, I don't recommend taking anything synthetic. I think whenever man makes something, it's for greed and money, and there is no spirit behind there. It's a demented entity that was made in a laboratory.
Yeah.
So that's first. And then the idea of mixing substances, I would never recommend that either. Yep. One at a time. And you said something so important, which is take your time to integrate, because it's not about having experiences. It's about what you do with the experiences that you have. And that's so important. Like if you are integrating the revelation that you're given, it is more spiritual, quote unquote, than how many times you've consumed the substance.
Yep.
Because if you just keep eating stuff, you're actually more damaged and you're not getting anything. And that's something that's so important, is like, we got to take the time to do that introspective practice. Like, so the way I see it is like psychedelics are, you know, they break the hard rock, and now you have shards of rocks everywhere. And then the meditation and the questing and the prayer is kind of tidying that back up, and you clean that, and you have to kind of know yourself and integrate that, and then go back in when it's your time, not just because you want to or you're at a party. Most of the videos that I see with salvia on the internet are always in public, are often like, that is a horrible situation. Like you're saying, heavy metal and strobe lights, not even close. You're already on mushrooms? No way. You know what I mean? This is a sacred experience that indigenous people have been working with for, you know, maybe 50,000 years. And we need to honor that process, you know.
What's crazy about the music part of it, I feel that we could do this without the mushrooms if we're sensitive to the spirit realm, but with the mushrooms or with the plant teachers, whichever they may be, I can feel the intention behind the music, like what was like the spirit behind that. That's what in the scriptures you have the psalmist, and they can just play without even speaking where they play, and you feel the intention while they're playing the stringed instruments. And that's what King David was. And music is powerful. There's stories where King David played the harp or the lyre, whatever it was, and the evil spirits rested off of Saul that were tormenting him. The only place he got rest was when he listened to that music. And there's other examples. I know Pythagoras talks about some stuff about the power of music and subsiding evil spirits by playing this beautiful, comfortable music. So going into those realms and being able to feel the intention, whether if somebody was playing a song that was about hatred, about war, about confusion and things like that, you can feel it, versus putting on music that's made for exploration, about creativity, about tapping into those realms, and what that person was going through when they wrote those songs and created it. You can feel that stuff. So that's why the music thing is super duper important, man.
It's also important to realize that in traditional settings, like if you go down to the jungle and you drink ayahuasca, they play music. They produce sound for probably 10% of the experience. Like, unless you're talking about Santo Daime, which is like a Christian ayahuasca hybrid. If you talk about like the traditional, ways that ayahuasca is drank, the only time they do an intro and an outro, and the only other time they make sounds is if you're bugging out. And otherwise, it's silent. And so the music is a different, it's not about performing, It's not about like, oh, look at me now and watch how good I am at this flute. It's like, oh, let me calm this person down because I see they're agitated. And that will be for like 30 seconds. And the person calms down and they slowly stop. So it's a very different thing than, we again interpret everything through like, oh, look at me, I'm so good. Like, check this out. And so we also need to understand that like, healing sound is not, it's not necessarily music as we interpret it, right? And so with all these psychedelic experiences, it's really important. If you have external stimulus, you're less liable to go within. Mm-hmm. So the more stuff that's outside of you that's happening or taking away your awareness to your internal process, the less you're going to kind of fold into yourself and see what's there. So that's, again, the setting is that your intention. My intention is spiritually growing. And so I need to give myself the proper way of spiritually growing. And that's not obviously by, you sit down, imagine you sit down, you're like, I'm going to meditate now. And you sit down at the computer and write emails the whole time. Obviously, you're not going to see yourself a lot, so you can be meditative and write emails, but it's different than actually sitting and meditating and facing some anxieties or pains that are in there. And we all have to do that work. And psychedelics are not necessary for that. And we need to be able to do both versions.
Yes.
If we're going to engage the psychedelics to do that spiritual growth, it's also important to do that spiritual growth without the psychedelics.
If not more, yeah. I got two more questions for you.
Sure.
Dealing with nature beings, I got a song coming out. It's called The Invisible Creatures of the Five Elements. And so talking about nature beings, I think it was Paracelsus who coined the phrases and actually gave these names of these beings who are over the plant kingdoms, the water, the air, the fire, the earth, and they help things grow as far as the plant life and these beings and stuff, man. Do you have any insight on that? Have you encountered anything? Have you been able to see anything? I mean,
so the way I see it is like there's three names that come to mind. One is the devas, so that's in the Sanskrit terminology. The other is Tom Brown's Tracker School calls it the keepers.
Okay.
And then there's also the elementals.
Elementals, yeah.
So these are forces, right, that are, we could call behind all things. And so one of the ways I look at it is like, so you see a yarrow plant, there's one individual yarrow plant. But then there's also like the fact that there are yarrow plants all around the planet. And each one of them is tapped into this signature, this elemental aspect. So there's the spirit of yarrow. And that is the one that we engage with to work with the body of yarrow. And if we don't, we're just working with bodies. So in alchemy, there's the body, the soul, and the spirit, right? And those are the three forms that we engage. And so with every plant, there are these energies behind them. And I think it's kind of misleading if we call them like beings, only because then people think there's people.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, you can see them in archetypal form. If you get into a meditative state, the yarrow spirit will come and show itself to you in a particular form. But of course, the form is less important than the transmission. And so, one of the things we didn't mention, and what I think bugs people out a lot with psychedelics, is that you gain super telepathy. Sometimes you can't turn it off. Sometimes you can turn it off for weeks. That is schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. You break open your telepathic capacity and you cannot handle the input coming in. That's what makes people schizophrenic. They could read everybody. They could read everything. They're reading everything. Too much information is coming.
Oh, yeah.
So we've narrowed down our telepathic communication in a way that enables us to exist in this world in a way that's safe. So with those energies, it's like telepathy comes and insights come. And I very much feel like by sitting with certain plants, I will receive a Latin name. It will tell me who it is. The other day I was teaching a plant walk. It was pouring rain. I had a hood over my head. I was looking down and I was just walking, and literally I was like, yarrow. Sorry, elderberry. Here's elderberry. And literally I realized that I didn't even look at it. How did I know it was even there? Because a sense, this elderberry spirit was like, hey, do you want to talk about me? Show them me. I want to engage these people.
Yeah.
And that kind of telepathic communion is something that I practice, and I think we can engage with the plant world. And so basically each plant has a keeper or a spirit. Now, we don't want to say that it's behind the plant, because just like your soul is not behind your body is the vessel for your soul. And so again, we shouldn't look under it. It's like God is not under the material world. The material world is the body of God.
Yeah.
And so that's what we need to remember. We can't dualize it into like, oh, that's not the spiritual part and that's the spiritual part. Mm-hmm. So we need to reintegrate those parts. And so every plant has that power of transmitting to us. And those are the kind of spirits of the plants.
Beautiful, man. My wife would kill me if I didn't, if I got you off the line and didn't ask you. She had a question. She wants to know, do you know any natural remedies to rid poison ivy? She is highly allergic. If it touches her body, it spreads. Do you know any natural remedies? Yeah,
I'm so glad you asked. So basically, the cure for poison ivy is right relation with poison ivy. And that means respect. And so poison ivy is a teacher of teaching humans that not everything is here for your exploitation, children. And when we honor a person like a grandmother, we don't get in our grandmother's face and say, get the fuck out of my way, lady, right? That would be super disrespectful. So what we try instead to do is say, I honor your need. I honor your boundary. I honor your space. I honor your presence. I know how to recognize you as my grandmother. And so we need to do the same thing with poison ivy. We need to realize that poison ivy is a protector of the forest. It grows on the edges of forests where people come to dump garbage. Those people that come and dump garbage, those are the people that leave with poison ivy. So first we understand that's the spirit of poison ivy. It's saying, hey, know that not everything here is just for you to put in your mouth. That's selfish, right? Learn how to have boundaries in nature. Not everything is here for you to exploit, and I'm the warrior that's protecting that. So poison ivy is a good messenger of like, wow, gosh, I wasn't being aware. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't walking in respect. So the first thing is learning poison ivy, giving it its due respect, and leaving it alone. Sometimes you need to pull it out of your garden or something. If you need to, wear gloves. Leave those gloves outside. Make sure it doesn't touch your body. That's different than walking in the woods and moving away from touching poison ivy. Now, when you get poison ivy, the thing is that poison ivy is not something that plant does to you. It's something your body does in reaction to the chemistry of poison ivy. It's a very different thing. So you have an inflammatory response and you have a liver enzyme response. That's what causes inflammation of the rashes on your body. So first of all, you'd mediate those by taking liver and lymphatic and anti-inflammatory herbs, of which there are many. You Google any of that, you'll see 25 of them. So that's going to help you flush out the chemistry of what poison ivy has that you get allergic to. The second thing is understanding that you have autoimmune reaction to things. And so people have allergies, not because of the substance, but because of their immune system reacting. So that's what we would treat. We would say, okay, you don't need to react as intensely. So looking at, obviously, diet, white flour, white sugar does not help your immune system be balanced. All the toxins that we've ever eaten and consumed and sprayed and breathed in, all these toxins, we need to cleanse those out of our bodies. And then we start getting to the core of balancing the immune function and then not having an overreaction. So like I work with immunomodulators. That's another class of herbs, right? Or mushrooms, for example. And those will help over time make you less reactive. And that's important as an herbalist to address the actual issue. So you address the issue over time, you reduce your immune overreaction, and then also symptomatically you treat like turmeric, oak bark tea, right? Anything with quercetin or anything anti-inflammatory will help. liver herbs such as dandelion, milk thistle, lymphatic herbs like cleavers. So that would be kind of a formula I'd be making. Plus, the other thing is, look at topically, you have a rash. That means your liver is trying to tell your body that it needs help pulling something out of your skin. So if you take oatmeal, right, make some cooked oatmeal, you put it on that area, starts to draw it, or like bentonite clay will start to draw it out. That's what your body is asking for help with, right? Saltwater bath, another thing. So you draw it through the skin and you treat internally.
That's awesome, man. So it's not essentially your body reacting. It's more of overreacting, right?
It's
Whenever you have something.
It's not something that happens to you. It's something that you're doing. You can mediate.
That's good. Okay, so this is the end of the show, man. I would just want to kind of give your links out. It was amazing talking to you, brother.
Yeah, you too.
It was good. So as far as so you do this for a living, you travel and you do tours and take people out in the woods and teach them things like that. So you could essentially travel and set up with a group of people and show how to commune with the plant kingdom, the elementals, and you could do a lecture and a class on that, right? A workshop.
Definitely, yeah, and that's what it's all word of mouth. And somebody emails me, they're like, "Hey, can you come here?" And I'm like, "Wow, I'll be there next month. So let's figure something out." So that's pretty much how the tour goes. So if anybody wants to collaborate and connect, you can always email me at dan@returntonature.us. And then also on my website, returntonature.us, and my Facebook page, which is Return to Nature Skills. There I'll make events on Facebook, and I have like a calendar there. And so anybody can see where I'm at. I may stay around New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania for the winter, finish up a book I'm writing, and then probably head west after that. So,
any plans to come to the South? We're all the way down in Alabama, man.
Cool. That's the next step. I'm definitely I love Asheville, North Carolina. So I'll definitely be headed south sometime, perhaps maybe the fall of 2018 is what I'm looking at. So
we'd love to set something up with you, man. It'd be awesome to come down here and show us what we got going on.
Yeah, it'd be great.
We got a lot of swamps down here, a lot of lily pads, elephant ears, all those type of things, man. You're talking about your body reacting to that stuff. I remember I was working for the city, and we used to have to go and weed eat and cut the ditches and stuff. And we're in there with weed eaters wide open. We're hitting these elephant ears, and nobody told us. And 10 minutes later, our body we're just itching and whelped up from cutting those things, man.
Yeah, when you attack nature, nature gets you back. It's look at the world. That's the problem with the world, is that we're attacking it's like beating up your face.
Yeah.
And not realizing that you're it. You're that. You are nature. If you attack nature, you attack yourself. Right? That's the missing piece of our whole environmental catastrophe of the pollution going out in the atmosphere and the cancer rate getting higher. Hello. That's, we are what we breathe. We are what we eat. We are what we live like. So
work with it, man. You'll essentially be able to return to nature, work with nature, not against it, man. Dude, thank you so much for coming on, brother. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I want to get you down here soon, brother. I definitely want to do something with you.
I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. Really appreciate it.
All right, brother. Shalom, shalom. Have a good one, man.
Adios.
Peace. Awesome. Dandelion. That was a good one. Really enjoyed it. I'm gonna try to get him down here too. So all of my Alabama friends who are listening and watching, we're gonna work something out with them really soon. Good stuff. I have a couple more scriptures I'd like to share, man. These scriptures that just talk about returning to nature, returning to where we came from, essentially. This is a good one. Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. So that's a beautiful scripture because it's talking about that you will be without excuse, that there's this these invisible qualities of a creator, because creation screams his name. It's like just simply looking at the sunsets. It says you'll be without excuse. Psalm 19:1. This is one of the big ones. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hand. Just getting back to nature. Job 12:7-10. But ask the animals, they will teach you. Let's just stop there. I don't have to keep going. Let's just stop there. Don't even finish it. But ask the animals, and they will teach you. Or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you. Or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these things does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind. That's beautiful, man. I know it's poetically written. It's written in metaphor form. But a lot of this stuff, man, I believe it's key to be taken literally. If not anything, try it. Right? Can we try it? Can we try to ask the animals literally? Will they teach us literally? Or it's just symbolic when we look at them, we see how they operate. We see that God takes care of them. God clothes them. He gives them breath in their lungs, right? Twofold, always. Everything is twofold, all of it. Speak to the birds in the sky and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth and it will teach you. Speak to the earth and it will teach you. Hey, I just think outside the box, man. Can we speak to the earth? I will tell you this, the earth is definitely speaking. Like he was saying at the very end, when we look at like what's going on in the earth right now, the planets, wars, rumors of wars, the hurricanes, all of this stuff, man, it's like just reacting, man. Just like he was talking about, like the poison ivy, your skin, your body reacts to it, and it's trying to get these toxins and things out of your body that's essentially causing harm. I'm pretty sure the hurricanes, man, they kind of fall in the same category. I mean, we look at the song, I think it's Anima, I believe is the song by Tool, talking about just catastrophes and earthquakes and things like that that's going on because Mother Nature is pissed. The earth is pissed. The Bible talks about the earth is alive and that the earth is a spirit. The planets are spirits. The planets are alive. And Maynard says, Mom's going to fix it all soon. Mom's going to ground it, put it back the way it ought to be. And at times, man, we look at earthquakes and look at all the destruction that goes on. Sometimes it's like a dog who's full of fleas. And they just want to shake the fleas off. It wants to get some type of, man, we're drilling in it, taking the oil, taking the resources, the vehicles, man, all of this stuff, man. Especially when there's clearly ways that we can work with the earth. Clearly ways now. Clean energy. Stuff's proven, man. All types of scientists and all types of independent researchers who are able to extract clean energy from motion. Man, I've seen this one. There was these conductors that they put in the ocean, right? And the waves would cause it to move back and forth, and it would conduct energy from the waves, pushing it back and forth and conduct energy. There's all types of stuff out there. Yeah, the earth is pissed off, man. I think we should return to nature. Someone in the chat, Chanel. Hey, Chanel, Kurt, Kanto, what's up, y'all? Chanel says that it reminds me of my song, I Return. Definitely. If you haven't heard that song, go check it out. The song I was going to refer to him is the Golden Teachers that I've done. But yeah, I'm returning to the belly of the earth. I'm returning to the place of my birth, back from the future to heal my hurt. I took a dose and I found my hope. The medicine is better when it helps me cope. Who am I? I am you. Back to the essence, remain true. Bask in the presence, chosen few. And I decipher the truth with my mind renewed. Never find what I'm seeking in school or church. Religion is deceiving, but I started there first. Doctrines of demons and the pain got worse. Find the ancient path to reverse the curse and I return. Beautiful song, man. I did that one with Hope Medford from the group Medicine for the People. Nako Bear. Hope, she plays the drums and djembe and she sings. Beautiful soul, man. I'd love to connect with her on here. I'm trying to make that happen. But yeah, make sure you check that song out. It's called Our Return. So I just want to thank everybody for hanging out with me. You guys are awesome. I love doing this. And like I said, again, I'm going to thank the patrons again who are allowing me to do this month to month. You guys are spending your hard-earned money on helping me pay bills and help me catch up and help me put out new music, man. I couldn't do it without you guys. From the bottom of my heart, I say thank you. My family says thank you. If you want to help, you can go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. And it's just not giving money just for the sake of giving, but you get free stuff. You get perks. You get rewards. You get new music, unreleased music. And I'm telling you, I'm sitting on some stuff right now that if you haven't heard it, you're missing out. 100%, 1,000%. If you have not heard my new music and you're a fan of my music, you're missing out. If you're a fan of spirituality and music in general, you're missing out. It's going to be available. It's going to be available to the general public. I don't know when, like when the album's done. But when I finish a song, when a song is done, I'll upload it to Patreon. And it's only for the patrons who are supporting, because you guys over there are totally helping me do this. The way the music industry is, we don't make a lot of money on music anymore. Man, I look at my iTunes statements, bro. It's like, man, it may be less than $100 a month sometimes. People don't buy music. They download it. You can't download a t-shirt. I have links in the description if you guys would like to buy some merch as well. All of that stuff helps support, and it goes a long way. It really does. So thank you guys for supporting independent music, independent artists, independent researchers. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. With that being said, I'm going to say shalom, and we'll get with you guys soon. We're going to do it again. Peace, peace.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.